most important eye of Russia in the Black Sea, one of the systems the invaders believed to be untouchable by ordinary electronic warfare. That confidence was precisely why the Russian officers aboard were paying more attention to their bottles of vodka than to their watch duties. They had no idea that, from this moment onward, both the BK-1 platform and the men aboard it had only minutes left to live. More than 100 kilometers away, along the coastal forests of Odessa, 3 Magura unmanned surface vessels belonging to Farata unit and the Russian Freedom Corps were being pushed off their hydraulic launch rails. Each vessel, less than 6 meters long, had been launched 3 hours earlier, completely silent, radar invisible, and radio silent. They carried 8 heavy FPV drones, each pre-programmed with its flight route, detonation point, and self-destruct range. Every drone was to collapse the rig's supports, destroy the relay deck, or blow apart the thermal-shielded relay tier. BK-1 was no longer a civilian oil platform. Since June 2023, according to joint intelligence from Farata and the Russian Freedom Corps, the platform had been converted into a radar relay, electronic warfare, and sonar node. It served as an intermediate anchor point within Russia's multi-layered air defense grid across the Black Sea, effectively a floating radar base. Once it was gone, the entire corridor between Snake Island and the Tarkankut coast would become a tactical blind zone where no radar could see. That was precisely why it was chosen. But the prey wasn't defenseless. Around it, Russia had established 100-kilometer radius, but blind near the sea surface. Layer 2. Surface wave radar and sonar sensors mounted directly on BK-1, designed to detect surface anomalies, yet vulnerable to small, slow objects. Layer 3. Automated 14.5mm machine guns and thermal imaging sensors mounted on the upper decks, capable of firing within 3 to 4 seconds of target lock. Farata had been tracking BK-1 for 90 hours using a single Beaver-type kamikaze UAV, flying alone, without GPS, without a data link. Weighing barely 50 kilograms, it relied solely on an inertial navigation algorithm combined with terrain matching. Like a nocturnal predator, it slipped past the Podlet K-1 line undetected. That drone revealed everything: the radar's rotation cycle, its dead intervals between pings, and even the blind zones between the rig's technical decks and lattice frames. Electromagnetic reflection maps, multispectral satellite images, and AIS data confirmed it, the shift change. At 3 a.m. was the most vulnerable moment for the entire outpost. The 3 Magura V-7 vessels advanced quietly in a pincer formation, closing in from 2 axes. The formation was designed not only to split detection risk, but to cut through each surface wave radar band and thermal corridor Russia, but functioning as the external brain of the entire strike. It handled navigation, received signals from FPV drones, transmitted final commands, and relayed encrypted satellite data back to Farata's control center. Mounted on its hull were anti-jamming modules, FLIR cameras, and mission recorders, all operating in full stealth mode. The second vessel, holding the left flank, was the primary strike carrier. 4 heavy FPV drones sat on 30-degree angled launch rails, prepped for release. Their targets were the western sections of BK-1, the rotating radar post, relay chamber, main electrical hub, and AIS repeater. The third vessel, on the right flank, handled decoy and diversionary strikes. 2 of its 4 drones were programmed as bait, emitting strong heat signatures to mimic engine exhausts and lure the rig's automatic guns. The remaining 2 drones would attack from the southeast, targeting the satellite uplink module, auxiliary power bay, and pressure valves on the lower deck. Throughout the entire mission, all 3 Maguras remained in full passive mode. All commands transmitted via internal laser channels and ultra-low frequency bands. At 3:10 a.m., the formation reached 6 kilometers from BK-1. On Farata's FLIR screens, the platform appeared as a glowing block of steel, each heat source visible across the spectrum. The rotating radar dome, relay control room, auxiliary power bay, and ABK-1 radar rotation cycle. Everything had been calculated to the second. Two of the drones, acting as decoys, ignited strong heat signatures, simulating internal combustion exhaust plumes, then climbed to a higher angle to draw the platform's automatic guns away from their true arcs of response. A fight without ammunition, reliant on the opponent's reflexes, that was the plan. From the stern of V-701, the FLIR suite tracked every streak. On thermal imagery, BK-1 resolved into distinct hotspots across the spectrum. The top rotating radar dome, the mid-tier relay room, the lower auxiliary power bay, and the AIS plus satellite antenna cluster on the starboard side. 1 minute after launch, one of the two decoy drones entered the field of view of the top-tier infrared sensor array. The system instantly switched from monitor to automatic defense. The 14.5mm machine gun mount slewed under the IR recognition algorithm and achieved target lock in 2.9 seconds. No human confirmation required. The guns opened fire. Drone number 7 was struck at 90 meters, detonating mid-air. A globe of fire hung for several seconds before falling into the sea. Thermal sensors logged the target as neutralized. Inside the control cabin, a technician exhaled lightly, convinced the strike had been foiled. But in those 4 seconds, with the autocannon still sweeping the wreckage, 6 operational drones slipped past the remaining air defense layers and closed in from the other 2 axes. The formation was now 2 kilometers from the target. At 3:14 minutes and 42 seconds a.m., the final decoy performed its act. It produced a maximal heat output, a faux combustion core simulating a diesel engine, leaving an IR trail over 90 meters long. Its flight path cut up to a high angle from the northwest, the sector with the broadest field of view but also the most susceptible to distraction. The top-tier thermal sensor classified the contact as a high-speed kamikaze UAV. The internal threat algorithm immediately escalated the alert from yellow to red. The 14.5mm autocannon on the watchtower angled toward the northwest. The platform's surface wave radar rescanned on a low frequency to reacquire the target, but the decoy's altitude profile caused it to be misclassified as the principal threat. No one suspected it was bait. A burst of 15 rounds shredded the decoy drone. It detonated in the air, a fireball so intense that the IR background rose by nearly 60 degrees Celsius. The platform's entire sensor suite became temporarily blinded by the explosion's thermal flash. Mid-tier sensors switched to noise suppression mode and optical cameras shuttered for 2.5 seconds. That 2.5 seconds was the golden window, enough time for the remaining 6 drones to enter their final approach. They dropped altitude below 3 meters, accelerating from 90 to over 130 kilometers per hour. Rotors screamed in the dense sea air, but the upper sensors were still pinned on the decoy. Each drone flew its designated corridor, skimming structure, slipping through gaps between decks, tucking into camera blind spots. At Farata's command center, the status line read, "Final phase confirmed. All paths green. Lethal commit in 12 seconds." At 3:14 minutes and 50 seconds a.m., while the decoy's wreckage still burned in the sky, Lieutenant Igorov, the duty officer, turned from the radar display to check the firing logs. A strange glint skimmed across the edge of the bulletproof observation glass. He looked up. Not 1, not 2, but a chain of 6 dark streaks skimming the sea like a string of ink drops under a shining wave. In that moment, Igorov understood. This was not a false return, not surface clutter, not seabirds. "Drone, we've got—" he shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the strange howl from the technical corridor as temperatures crossed safety thresholds. His warning was cut off by a thunder from the mid-tier. The lead drone had struck. The impact hit exactly at the junction between the main switchgear and a high-frequency filter. A shaped charge detonated inside the sealed transformer compartment, producing a backblast that tore a steel hatch outward and spat a jet of flame into the technical corridor. The main breaker charred black, and the mid-tier power bus was severed. Flames raced along cable trunks. Smoke began to fill Technical Bay 3. At 3:15 minutes and 5 seconds a.m., drone number 2 swung across the port side and slammed into the signal relay room. Fragments from the warhead punctured the internal control board. Electrical arcs flashed repeatedly for 3 seconds. Then all status lights went off permanently. The top-tier radar lost drive control, freezing at 121 degrees before dying. At 3:15 minutes and 9 seconds a.m., drone number 3 struck on a flank, diving into a maintenance gap and ramming the mechanical azimuth bearing of the radar. Impact angle 36 degrees. The shaped charge destroyed the bearing assembly. The mast, over 5 meters tall, cracked and toppled to the starboard, embedding itself in the deck. Shrapnel